and welcome to Renfrewshire Libraries in conversation with Football Heroes author Matt Oldfield. Hi Matt. Let's kick off with Mohamed Salah. We've got the book here as well, fabulous. Great, Matt. So Mohamed Salah, he grew up in an Egyptian village hours away from the capital city, Cairo, but he had everything he'd needed with his brothers. They had their football park, they had their school, they had their shop, they had their cafe, their mosque and the community centre, but in particular, he had his access to football on TV.
Absolutely, yeah. So, it's just kind of this picture of a very small community where Mohamed had, I feel like for him in particular, there were two main things. One being the football pitch where he could really play, and second being the local bar, which would show these, especially I think Champions League matches, the European ties, and the kind of the glamour of all of that. So watching kind of 90s Champions League football, so players like Ryan Giggs and those Roma teams with Francesco Totti, and just I think those kind of experiences, watching that on TV, miles away obviously, but allowed him to dream of this being a possibility, because I think otherwise you're so far in Egypt there, he's so far away from even Cairo, the capital city, but he's got that connection through watching the games on TV that makes him think, I could do this, and so he then goes out onto the local pitch nearby and plays like his heroes basically.
As you say, Matt, this was his dream, and indeed he was scouted from his local village football pitches, and he was scouted for a team far away in the capital city, Cairo. But this meant that there was a lot of commuting involved to reaching his dreams, but also to remind that school education and life in the village was far away, but still very much dominant in his life.
Yeah, so when he joined the youth team of, I believe this is how you pronounce it, but sorry if wrong, El Mokaloun. So when he joined the youth team, he would have to go to training quite often, and so he'd get his school would let him leave early to go to this, because this was 4.5 hours of bus journey away. And so, a few times a week, he'd be doing this journey on his own, 14 years old, exhausting journey over there, somehow doing his homework along the way, gets there, and then, straight off the bus has to kind of, perform and play well in order to, stay in the team. And then he has to make the long journey home afterwards, and, so gets home totally exhausted, and then has to get up the next morning to go to school again. I think it was, I suppose it's an early taste for these players of the dedication it takes to become a top professional.
Well, as you say, Matt, perform he did, because from being scouted to his club team in Cairo, he was eventually scouted and headed to Europe, firstly in Switzerland with FC Basel. But again, this was a long way away from home again, so he did have that period of homesickness. But there's a great quote that you say in the book that he did think about his previous journeys as a young boy on the buses, that he would succeed at Basel. Yeah,
absolutely, and it was a perfect place for him, because the Swiss club is very much a sort of feeder club for the bigger clubs in Europe, so they would kind of take a bit of a risk on some of these, especially African footballers, who would spend a couple of years there. If they became good, they would move on to bigger clubs like in Italy, Spain and England. And so I think when he first arrived, there was a period of time when he wasn't used to any of this. Growing up in Egypt, the language, the culture, the weather, everything is different, and so it took him a bit of time to adapt. But he did become a top player at Basel, and he actually ended up scoring a few goals against Chelsea, which then led to him making his move to the Premier League.
Yeah, and obviously we know since with the Premier League and his success at Anfield. Well, the final whistle has blown, Matt, so thank you very much for sharing an insight into the research, writing and story of Mohamed Salah.